Hey there, so today we have another beer talk, and this is about, I guess, something a little outside of beer. So this actually arises from me asking if a beer bar was applying Hops Hill, and they said they weren't, but if they were, how much do you know about whiskey, by the way, which I thought was interesting. I was like, man, I'm honestly quite confident about how much I know about beer for a beer bar, and then they're like asking about other stuff that's honestly relevant, but still. I was like, all right, I guess not. So at that moment, I was like, instead of taking the news poorly, you try to improve yourself. So I went online and bought a bunch of books to round out my knowledge base, because I could say that. I could definitely round out my knowledge base. So I bought Tasting Whiskey by Lou Bryson, so that's really cool. I've been digging into that, just started it. Really cool learning about the history and then the process, which actually is super relevant, or very similar to beer, so it's familiar, but there's a lot more to read and learn about whiskey. I also have Kevin Rowley's Windows on the World Complete Wine Course. So I actually love the film Somm, if you haven't seen it, SOMM, and actually watch a lot of wine videos, but it's really cool now to dig into the more technical side of it. And boy, I have a lot of credits to sommeliers out there, because there's a lot to learn about wine. The regions, endless, and grapes, and this and that. There's a lot to learn. So obviously that's obvious, but when you get into it, it can be daunting. Another one is Death & Co. Modern Classic Cocktails. So this is actually a speakeasy in the East Village. I've been there a bunch when I was a little bit younger, but it really is insane to dig into this book and really appreciate how much there is involved in the cocktail world. And it's a really cool book teaching you the liquors, the modifiers, technique, and so many recipes. It's been really fun, and it's actually super relevant to the bar I work at now. It was a little daunting, just at first being behind the bar that is just more than beer. But in a month, I feel like I've learned so much, about technique and ingredients and recipes, and that's what I spend my time doing. And also, right before I bought all these books, I was also ready to buy all my equipment for homebrewing, because honestly, for me, obviously I love this channel, I love reviewing beer and all that fun stuff, but honestly I wish that I started homebrewing so much earlier, because if you want to learn about beer, other than just reading books, start homebrewing, because that really is a world that you can just learn so much, and I think that that should have been something I did earlier, but it is what it is. So now I'm juggling my time between reading these books, so I'm working full time, and I have to sleep. But outside that, I'm commuting. And so if I'm commuting, I'm either reading one of these 3 books, or I'm listening to a beer podcast, maybe a homebrewing podcast, learning more about that stuff. Or I'm at home with a little free time and watching just YouTube videos about cocktails, whiskey, or wine. So literally every single moment, I'm either working, involving in the industry, learning about the industry, or sleeping. And so that is, it's fun. It's crazy to get into these worlds, because it sort of reminds me of getting into craft beer. When I got into craft beer, every single moment, I'd be constantly on YouTube trying to learn every single thing I could, watching other beer reviewers. That's obviously why I had this channel, and that's why I started the channel, because it was so cool digging into all that content. And now there's another 3 worlds of content and homebrewing that I'm just getting more and more immersed in. And I'm waiting for the moment for the brain to explode, but it's fun. It's fun getting into that. And it's crazy. And this actually goes to another question. Actually, I interviewed at Five Boroughs, a place in Brooklyn, a brewery that's opened up, and interviewed with the taproom manager, and I honestly had a question for him, what would you like to see in a person hired at the taproom? And he said, personality is more important than knowledge, because knowledge you can just teach. And I was like, it took me aback. I was like, all right. And my personal opinion, I could not disagree more. You can't teach knowledge. The amount of time that I spent growing this channel, learning my palate, even off camera after reviewing beer, I'm reading. You can't just teach somebody 4 years worth of beer, right? You can't just teach that. And this is not only involved in working in the industry. So you can pay somebody 8 hours a day, but can you pay them to go home? You obviously could, but you're not going to spend the money on going home, on their commute, studying, at home studying, learning more. Sure, I guess personality is obviously really important if you're going to be in a tap room, but knowledge, I honestly don't think you can just teach that. It is passion, and you really have to spend more than just time on the clock learning. You have to commit your life to learning some of these passions and some of these worlds of knowledge. So that's my opinion. Post in the comments below if you disagree. or have any comments about it. Until next time, cheers. And please comment below if you are knowledgeable about cocktails, wine, or whiskey, because I'd really like to learn more from you guys. Until next time, cheers. Later.